It's 9/30, 2024. World famous Level Up College Football Podcast in the building on Fans First Sports Network. Andy P, Sarah C, Big G, doing what we do, talking that college football nonsense. And listen, wherever you get your audio podcast, Apple, Spotify, Google, I don't care where you're listening to it. Just make sure you tune into the Level Up College Football Podcast because we got a lot going on around here. There's a lot of podcasts like us, but they ain't nobody like us. So listen, before I get in all the shenanigans and all whatever else, let me kick it to my co-host and ask him what's cracking-lagging. Andy P, what's going on with you, bro? What's happening, man?
You know, it was a good college football weekend. I'm glad to be here. I'm getting psyched up because I got my second of 3 college football road trips happening this week. So we're getting the suitcase backed again. I'm going out to Vegas to watch Syracuse UNLV, get some boots on the ground to figure out what's going on with that NIL situation. Go do some in-person scouting of the UNLV team, see if they can handle the orange of Syracuse here in their first road test for Fran Brown, but going with a bunch of Syracuse people. So it's going to be, we're doing a tight 36 hours in Vegas. We're not spending a lot of time there. Otherwise, I could get into some trouble, could get into some sticky situations. So we're going in for the game and we're going out after the game's over.
Stay off of that boulevard, Andy P. Stay off of that boulevard. I could go into a lot of things about that boulevard, but you stay off of there. Sarah C, what's cracking with you? What's cracking? What's going on with you? How's your week? How was the weekend in college football?
The weekend was great. It was really awesome to see a lot of these games. I was really excited with the Bama-Georgia game, which I know we'll talk about later. But I was a little sad. I stayed up and tried to stay up through it. Was my Utah Utes fell this past week, and I really still have a little bit of belief in them, but it was hard to see, and I stayed up right until that last little bit in the end of the fourth quarter because it was getting late. I was Sarah, like, I can't do it anymore.
Sarah, Utah is cooked. Utah's cooked. We're going to talk about it. We'll get to it. We'll talk about it, but they up out of here. It's adios, muchachos, my friend. Right? Hey, but listen, we got a great show, and Andy often imitated, never duplicated over in the live chat, man. That's absolute big facts. Man, absolute big facts. Often imitated, never duplicated, Level Up College Football Podcast. So, without further ado, let's get to the topics. Let's get it chopped up. Let's talk what we need to talk about. Y'all, there's a new number 1 in college football. After the instant classic of the Georgia-Alabama game, we got a new number 1. But we had a shift, not necessarily a ground-shaking shift, but a lot of things have shifted concerning the top 25. So I just want to talk a little bit about the surprises, the slights, the things that we didn't think was going to happen, whose season might be cooked already. And I'm going to get a feel from you guys to see which way this conversation goes. Andy, I'm going to kick it to you two first, bro. What are you thinking and what are you talking about concerning this new number 1 and a shift in the top 25, bro?
Yeah, I think my most controversial opinion that I have about week 5 was that I actually came away from that game feeling really good about Georgia. That was a game where that first half, they were very clearly getting outcoached by Kalen DeBoer, who I think at this point in time, we have to put up there. He and Steve Sarkisian are the 2 best offensive coaches in football right now.
He's him.
2 of them, any single matchup, the 2 of them can scheme it up. And Alabama identified very early on that Georgia did not know how to track motion. They had an advantage on the edges and vertically with their speed if they could get guys running and moving pre-snap. And then you saw in the second half, Georgia just absolutely clamped down on that. The offense woke up and was much more effective in the second half. I think that if that game goes to overtime, which obviously is not what happened with the way the score was going, I think Georgia wins that game in overtime. The difference was, like we were talking about it last week, Alabama had the best player on the field, and I think Alabama deserves to be the number 1 team. But moving forward from here, the fact that Georgia dropped all the way down to 5 below Tennessee, I understand that, Tennessee is undefeated, Texas is undefeated. I would not surprise me at the end of the year that we see Alabama 1, Georgia 2, because Georgia still has to play Texas and Tennessee on the schedule. And I'm coming out of this game feeling like Georgia has now identified its weakness on defense, and you won't be able to run that. You won't be able to beat Kirby the same way twice. And you're now looking at the top 4 of Alabama, Texas, Ohio State, Tennessee. 3 of those teams are going to play Georgia, and if Georgia is able to go 2-0 against Texas and Tennessee from here on out, the top 3 is going. The top 3 in the AP 25 is going to be Bama, Georgia, and whichever team wins the Big Ten. And to me, I think that like we know that the season has been all around the Big Ten and the SEC kind of taking over all the top spots. At this point in time, it's just really clear that all the best teams are in those 2 conferences, specifically in the SEC.
Got it. Sarah, your reaction to the top 25. But I got to ask you another little question, right? Is there some bias going on with this SEC? Because Andy done drunk the Kool-Aid. But I want to see, like, do you think is it SEC bias with these rankings? Because normally when a team loses a game, they fall out of the top 10. So I just want to see what your reaction is concerning this new ranking.
I
She's
100% agree with what you stated. I also what the heck?
Go ahead, Sarah. You all right?
I'm on. I can hear me.
I got her, Andy. I got her. Go ahead, Sarah.
I agree with you on the SEC bias. That was actually one of my biggest things with the drops versus the ones that were going up. I do understand why Georgia dropped, but I feel like Tennessee shouldn't have really moved because of the fact that Tennessee didn't have to play this past week. And now we need to see them. Georgia has a little bit of a tougher schedule than Bama, which is why I think Bama is going to probably stick up there. So because they have pretty much played probably their hardest opponent for the rest of the season, personally, with the SEC in the SEC. But the drops were like the ones that I was like, like Louisville taking such a massive drop and Utah taking such a massive drop, but Ole Miss is still super close to the top 10 and they lost to Kentucky. Like, I agree now. I see it. I understood. You guys off camera, last week told me I was crazy and you were right. I will take the hit on that. But I definitely see the bias, but I definitely think that, they've had a lot more harder games recently. I can't wait to see when we get into more of the Big 10, Big 12 ACC games, which is what I'm getting excited for that's coming up.
Yeah, listen, I agree with both points you guys made concerning the top 25, but I just think that there's so much road to go. I don't have a problem with Bama jumping to number 1. I really don't. Because when you have a 2 versus 5, 4 or 5 or whatever they were ranked matchup, and you win the game in the fashion that you win it, you should jump to number 1. Because there was bias when Texas beat Michigan. Texas jumped from like 3 or 4 all the way up to number 1 because they beat Michigan. So I don't have an issue with that. But what I do have an issue with is how a team loses in the SEC and doesn't fall out of the top 10. That is an issue. Because any other conference, let Ohio State lose to Oregon. They're going to try to put Ohio State out the top 10. And there's nowhere for because Oregon's still going to be a top 5 or 6 ranked team by the time they play in 2 weeks. But let them lose. You're going to see them drop way down. And I'll be like, come on, man. This is bias. So, and what really I'm fussing about nothing because the AP don't count. But for many of us, it does count because we know we're going to stack apples to apples concerning the rankings of the schools. Now, this is my other question because, like I said, the AP doesn't count, but it does count. How much of this plays a role when we get the first college football poll rankings? Because they're going to be talking about weeks at number 1, who you beat, where they was when you beat them, all that, whatever. So, Sarah, I'm going to ask you, does the AP play weight concerning the rankings for the first college football playoff rankings, which we're weeks out before that shows up?
Oh, I 100% think it does. Because we're looking at these rankings as almost like a power rankings in the sense of the main majority of the writers and so on that think that these are the top teams. And I think that they really put a heavy stake into that. But I also think that they look at the SEC and the Big 10 almost separate. And when the playoff committee, because I think they take their losses and their wins a little bit differently. And I think that's where the bias comes in. But I definitely am intrigued to see what's going to happen. But I can see where you will see the bias in that, and the AP being a lot more involved in their decisions.
Digging it. Andy, bro, same question, but I got a spin on it. How much does the bias take precedence against the ACC? I mean, right now, look, it's only one. It's only one, Andy.
I'm just gonna say the ACC needs to fix its refereeing before I can even, you can even get there, because I'm watching. I watched the end of that. Just an anecdote there. I watched the end of that Virginia Tech Miami game in a crowded bar. There's, I'm rolling with like 6 other guys. We've got like, everybody's watching the game. There's probably 30 people are standing around. 30 people thought that play went 30 different ways, like that. And the fact that none of them thought that the play went the way the ref did, that's on the ACC. But I'll get into that in a bit. What I do think is interesting this year about the college football playoff is that ESPN, remember, is the one that really controls the playoff. They have the entire television rights to the whole playoff. They're splitting some of it with Turner, but this is really an ESPN creation. And one of the things that I've noticed this year that's shifted from other years, ESPN is really pushing these alternative rankings that they have in-house. So we see this with the college basketball selection committee, where they say you can use certain rankings to inform decision-making, but you can't use these other ones. And so ESPN, who is the entity that owns the playoff, has their own college football power index. They also have Bill Connolly's SP Plus behind their ESPN Plus paywall, which is my preferred power ranking metric. And when you look at both the FPI and the SP Plus ranking, there is not an ACC team ranked in the top 10 of either whatsoever. The highest ranked team that's not an ACC team is Notre Dame, the independent, who's sitting at 9 in the FPI, sitting at 10 in SP Plus. And I think that this is where it's going to be really interesting to see how much that first college football playoff ranking mirrors either the AP, SP Plus, or FPI. Because then we all know this is the thing that they're hanging up in the wall saying, like, okay, we're using this as the basis for our playoff rankings. And again, I just think it's interesting because ESPN, they did this a few years ago with the NFL. Like, nobody was talking about QBR. Nobody wanted to use QBR. Now, everywhere you go in an NFL discussion, QBR is there right next to every quarterback stat. So again, this is just something that ESPN has done before. It's a little conspiracy theory for me, but I've seen it happen with them. And as somebody who's like, I do think that the AP poll is starting to lose a little bit of its luster just because there is such an obvious bias towards the Big Ten and the SEC, because that's where most of the media coverage is now. That's where most of the voters are turning their attention. And you're seeing it reflected in which games they watch and how they value certain teams versus other teams.
Good stuff, man. But listen to this. Segue into this, right? Because this is going to make all the sense in the world. Because I'm telling y'all right now, if the Heisman Trophy vote happened today, the top 3 people don't play in the Big Ten or the SEC. The top 3 players right now, if you had an actual vote that went national polls, the top 3 players are not there, right? So this segues into what our next section is talking about with this Heisman thing, right? How much is that going to play into it? Because, listen, can y'all tell me when the national spotlight wasn't on the Heisman Trophy winner? And what more would they want but to have their Heisman Trophy winner playing in the playoff? So, Sarah, I'm asking you, like, if you had to rank top 5 today, Heisman, who would it be? And then how is that going to play an effect on the college football rankings moving forward?
Well, I have a couple opinions on that. I think Jalen Milroe is going to be the favorite overall, just because of the fact of that he does come from an SEC school, and he's putting up some really great numbers. I mean, that's 62 of 85. I know, but he is fun to watch.
Mm.
964 yards, 10 touchdowns, 1 interception, and another 273 yards rushing and 8 touchdowns. Like, I mean, you can't ignore that. But my guy is 100% Travis Hunter. I think he deserves
Ooh.
all the praise in the world. Now RG3 came out on Twitter this past weekend saying that he thinks that he's going to actually go to the NFL and play both sides. He thinks that he'll be able to do it. I personally don't think it's the right decision, but I think that would definitely be amazing because he is just amazing to watch. He's super entertaining. Just the way that he cuts his routes, the way that he is able to cut into wide receivers' routes, like that interception this past weekend was something that unbelievable. And so I think he is probably second. And then I don't know what other ones you were thinking that weren't in the Big Ten and the SEC other than Genty from Boise State. I know that he is putting up a lot of numbers and he can get through anything. He looks so tiny on camera. I don't know if that's actually what he is, but he just fits through any hole that he can possibly do. And then like the last few, I think these freshman receivers could possibly peek in. Jeremiah Smith is only 3 touchdowns away from breaking Chris Carter's freshman record from 1984. And that excites me so much. And every time he can catch that ball, it's the most exciting thing I've seen in a very long time. And this will be now 5 years in a row where they have like the best wide receiver in college football. So
big facts. Andy, I know you're going to spin this with some ACC bias because she didn't mention a player in the ACC, but I'm on board with this player, right? So, Andy, I want to talk about your top 5 Heisman. Is this going to play a factor in the playoff? What type of deal is this going to be moving forward with the college football rankings?
Yeah, I mean, look, we have not had a Heisman winner come from a team ranked outside the top 25 since Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is basically your answer for everything when it comes to the last Heisman winner who wasn't part of X, Y, and Z. So going by that, and if you expand it beyond Lamar Jackson, he becomes one. I think it's like 25 years or something. So you're looking for a level of statistical and on-field dominance that is very difficult to be replicated. And so I do think that at what Ashton Genty is doing at Boise, especially considering now, like, again, I'm gonna get up on my high horse here. I called it probably 6-8 weeks ago when we did our preview show. Boise is my team to make the playoff out of the group of 5. Boise UNLV Mountain West game that's going to be in I believe it's early November. That's going to be the game of the year. It's going to be absolutely fantastic game. But Genty has a chance to put up insane running back numbers to a level that, Lamar Jackson era dominance. Travis Hunter, obviously playing both ways, doing it on both sides of the ball, has to be in consideration there, especially considering that he is performing each week. Now, again, he was doing this last year, maybe not at the same high level, but he was doing this last year, and then he got hurt, and he is still remarkably small weight-wise for a guy who's playing this many snaps. But again, I have faith that it seems like his recovery process is a lot more aggressive than it was previously. I think Sarah hit the nail on the head. As much as I think that Ryan Williams is the best player on the Alabama offense, Jalen Milroe is going to get a lot of the credit. Jalen Milroe is going to be the Heisman favorite off of the Alabama team. I don't personally agree with that. I think it should be Ryan Williams, especially after that last game that we just saw from him. But a lot of season left to go. That might change. The wild card here is Cam Ward because
that's big facts.
Because one thing that we haven't seen is what happens to the national media when Miami gets good. Miami is that outlier team that when they are good, nobody shuts up about Miami. And look, the college football is a lot more fun when Miami is good. And they survived a scare against Virginia Tech. They are now going on the road. They're the game day game this week when they go out and play Cal. So they've got the showcase game. They had the scare. If they go out and take care of business against Cal and Cam Ward looks good there, he's going to be in the driver's seat to not only go to New York, but be the Heisman favorite, because as we've kind of talking about here, they are always going to try to find a way to give it to somebody who's on a team contending for a national title. If Miami runs the table and goes undefeated in the ACC, they're going to be, a top 4 seed in the playoff, not automatically. And Cam Ward is going to be the face of that team that no one's going to shut up about. So I do think that we still have to see a few more weeks and prove that Miami can't choke, because they're sure trying to right now. But Cam Ward's the one that I think could very quickly become the favorite, especially if Genty and Travis Hunter slow down even just a little bit.
I agree with you guys, players that you named. I think all of them are definitely Heisman front runners at this point. I love that Genty kid. My comp on him, and y'all might say, gee, you being big biased, but my comp on that kid is Barry Sanders. He plays like, he looks like, I'm like, oh yeah, this kid is Barry Sanders, man. So I think his game translates to the next level, even more than any of these people that we're talking about. But I got a dark horse. That I think that if he does what he needs to do in these next 3 games, he can walk away with the Heisman Trophy. Nico Imavoala, quarterback, Tennessee. Nico can do it. I'm telling you, he's got to set up in the catbird seat. He's got to handle his business against South Carolina. He's got to handle his business. But then he's got Bama at the crib. And I don't know if you guys remember a couple of years ago when Tennessee and Hayden beat Bama 42-41 against Bryce Young, and they tore them goalposts down and was screaming Rocky Top. If Hayden doesn't get hurt that season, Hayden walks away with that Heisman Trophy. And I'm telling y'all, they have been trying to put a Heisman in Rocky Top since Peyton Manning was down there. And they ain't been able to pull it off. But this Nico kid, based on the schedule, and it sets up sweet for him. So he's just got to play through, because I think some of these other players are going to take lumps. Now, last thing for me, realistically, I think Jeremiah Smith has an outside shot to get it as well. For this fact and this fact only, I predict that he's going to get 2 to 3 touchdowns against Iowa. If he gets 3, he's got 10, right? That's going into the Oregon game, where all eyes in 2 weeks is going to be out there in Eugene. If he blows up in Eugene and plays what you saw against Michigan State, oh my God. This kid will be on pace to get 20 touchdowns. For a freshman, are you serious? Come on now. Come on now. We ain't never seen nothing like that before. So I'm saying that he's got a shot, but the cards has got to fall right. But Nico's got the setup, right? Now, Bama, yes, of course. Travis Hunter, can he keep? Travis Hunter will have it against Kansas State in 2 weeks as well.
I know. I'm excited.
Game days. Listen, I'm telling y'all right now, game day's going to Boulder. I'm telling you, but game day's going there. It's going to be game day's going to be at Boulder, Kansas State versus Colorado. I guarantee it. There ain't been no announcement. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. So all eyes is going to be on him as well. So some of these players, like you're saying, Andy, is going to have, and Sarah, y'all, big time shots, because opportunities to win big time games is out there, y'all. Any thoughts about that before we switch to the segue and we start talking about football games? Sarah, Andy?
No,
I'm just interested to see moving forward here. No, I'm just interested to see what happens with the vote, with the betting lines here, because we saw this last year too, where there wasn't any clarity, and so they just kind of kept sticking with Bo Nix, even though we all knew that Bo Nix wasn't gonna get the Heisman. They're doing that again with Jalen Milroe. Carson Beck dropped pretty significantly. He was the favorite, but he's dropped out after this loss. But again, I just don't think anyone has a really clear handle on it, because we haven't had enough of these showcase games yet. So I feel like within 4 or 5 weeks, that everything will really settle down there. But again, I want Ashton Genty to get it, man. He's already almost at 1,000 yards for the season.
Yeah, it's like 850 something, ain't it? Ain't like 850 something?
Yeah, and that's just rushing, let alone his receiving yards. It is. I don't know what the single season rush yard record is, but at this pace, man, he might hit it, and that's the kind of thing that I really want to see.
Hit it with one loss, Andy. Hit it with one loss.
And he always has one big blow up run every single game.
Yeah. Every game he breaks a 60 or 70 yarder. Sarah, you're absolutely correct. He's a man, Barry Sanders. I'm just saying. People might say, "Are you being biased?" And I'm telling LaDainian Tomlinson, Barry Sanders, whatever way you want to say it, that's who this kid is. So that's what I'm saying. All right, y'all, listen. We got to take a break. If you're watching us live on YouTube, we'll be right back after pause for the cause. Wherever you're listening to us on audio, Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, we'll be right back with the Fans First Level Up Sports Podcast with Andy P. and Sarah C. and Big G. We'll be right back, folks. And we're back with the Level Up College Football Podcast. Chilling, talking about college football, Heisman top 10. We got some chatter over there in the live chat. Tim talking about ain't nobody ever going to be like Barry. Get that mess up out of here, Tim. There's always the next generation of the player. Come on now. We've seen this before. We've talked this across all sports. The next iteration of the great player is always on board. So, yeah, we might have a Barry Sanders type guy going on with Genty. But we got to get to the games. But before we get to it, I got one more subject we got to talk about. Houston, we have a problem. NIL. Listen, I mean, we could talk literally, we could kill the rest of the show about this topic, but we got to talk games because this is bananas. Okay. I'm going to set it up and I'm going to toss it up to my teammates. NIL is killing college football slowly. But this is the first shots that we're seeing because it's happening in Vegas. It just happened in Washington. The starting linebacker just said, "I'm out of here." It's happening down in the SEC. One of the Georgia players said, "Nah." So now you're getting players to sit out, including the starting quarterback of an undefeated UNLV team. Ladies and gentlemen, Andy P. and Sarah C., what in the heck is going on? Because I think we got a problem. Andy, what's up with it, bro? What's up with it?
I mean, I'm just going to say this. I think we're going to find out more about the UNLV situation being less about a scandal and more about, like, actually we were trying to get rid of this guy because Hajj-Malik Williams showed up and looked better than Matt Sluka ever did.
Big facts.
I'm starting to think that might have been a situation where the coaching staff realized they had made the wrong call and might have. Back in the day, it used to be, well, scholarships aren't guaranteed year to year. Now that we're paying you, we can just decide not to pay you about this because none of this is really contractual. It's all kind of up in the air. I do think that what's going to happen and what we're going to see start happening are more written contracts between teams and the players. Right now, some of these are working off of honor systems. Some of these are working off of contracts that are incredibly vague and do not necessarily do much besides guarantee money after certain numbers of appearances. But remember, starting next year, as part of the House settlement with that massive lawsuit that was brought up around NIL, teams will be able to pay players directly out of money that is made from merchandise and from money that's made from the TV revenue. And
so you're talking about money outside of the collective. They'll be
outside of the collective. This is straight from the school, mandated by the federal government. Mandated. It's about 20%, I believe, of that money has to go to the players. Now, that money is subject to Title IX enforcement, meaning that there needs to be some sort of equitable split between men's and women's sports. But for all intents and purposes, it means that the school has to pay the players who bring in the most TV revenue and bring in the most attendance to games, which is going to be football. And with that money, I can almost guarantee there will be written contracts that say you are going to get paid over a season period of time. And, this requires you to be, not being a redshirt unless it's a medical situation and whatnot. The NIL collective stuff, I think, is going to continue to be in this weird nebulous area until you can legally say, all right, cool, we will give you the NIL money in the same kind of structure. I think it's this, we're just still really early in this. Players are testing the waters. I think players are also learning the hard fact. Grass is not always greener on the other side, buddy. Nothing is guaranteed. You still got to show up in practice. These are still football coaches, man. They expect you to give it 110% in everything, not just play you because you're getting the most NIL money.
Got it. Sarah, I'm just asking, does this, because Andy hit it out of the park with the facts, but I want to just get your view on, will you think it'll trend up where more players will do it, or we're going to see it get killed real quick, fast, in a hurry, concerning players saying, nah, you ain't give me the bread you said and all this, that, and this, so I don't want to play. Which way do you think this thing is going to trend?
Well, I did a lot of research on it just recently because after this whole UNLV thing, I was quite intrigued to see, because I wanted to know the percentage of the NIL versus, where any of the rest of the money is coming from. But what what I'm having a hard time with is like with the contracts and stuff, and I want them to be able to do that. I think the students need the protection, and I think the universities need protection, but they have no one regulating them, and the NCAA is not the one to do it. And they are fighting in court over some of the dumbest things I have ever read in my entire life, that they had to change the word for boosters because of the fact that the NCAA has rules if they are getting monies from boosters. So the new law is saying an associated entity. It's just that they are so worried about the bottom of the barrel type of things that you should be worrying about. They want to know if they're spending more than $600 a player. $600. I mean, that's not even just putting them up in a dorm room. And you're worried about $600 that's given to a student who's bringing in millions of dollars for your universities. So it's just that you're not going to really know until there is some type of entity that can kind of put rules and be in charge. And I know that a lot of the main people, especially in the Big Ten, especially in the SEC, they've gotten together and they're trying to come up with different types of ways to do it. But right now, I mean, it was 1.17 billion was spent last year through collectives for NIL deals. That's 81%. Like it's not going to go down anytime soon. And until the NCAA gives up their power, because they have none, it's just going to be the wild, wild west.
Yeah. So trending up without a shadow of a doubt. Y'all, I listen, Sarah, I'm with you. And Andy, y'all kick knowledge and y'all kick facts. For anybody that's listening to us, you need to understand that the team we have here do serious research concerning things. We just don't get out here and just start spitting stuff. There's some serious facts that was laid down. But Sarah, I'm with you 100% concerning, I think this trend, until they get regulations from the collective and from the universities about the dollar amount and how it's regulated, is going to go up. And Andy, I agree with you as well, because they're going to have alternative ways to fund these players. Okay, NIL says you can't get A, B, C, and D. I'm just going to be a major funder, and I'm going to come in and drop $2 million off to a kid. We've already had that happen. I can't remember the guy who's the famous podcaster. He said he paid $3 million to get a quarterback in Michigan next year out of his own pocket. So, this thing is about to get strenuous. Last little piece before we get to the games, because I noticed that something happened behind this. All of a sudden now the Big Ten and the SEC is having conversations about locking in and saying, we don't need nobody else. So I think that's even going to drive the money up higher. You guys' thoughts about this Big Ten, SEC locking in and saying, nah, we ain't playing nobody else. SEC going to play us. Big Ten going to play us. Everybody else get up out of here. Your thoughts, Sarah, your thoughts about this which could be the biggest deal ever. SEC and Big Ten coming together as one.
Well, I mean, this is whenever you're going to see there's going to be no more conferences anymore. You will either have the teams in the Big Ten and the SEC, and then you'll have these smaller, teeny tiny conferences that just don't have the money. It's now I mean, look at what's even going on with the Pac-12 after they decided that they were bringing teams in. They still don't have enough to get it into the
The
college
Pac
football
who?
playoffs.
Who you talking? The Pac who? What number are
Or
they
wait,
now?
Pac
6, 7,
7, 8.
3? I don't know. But go ahead. Go ahead.
So the fact that they've depleted even, and they can't even get enough teams to even make themselves even eligible for the top 5 spots, I will not be surprised if more and more schools start joining those conferences, and it just becomes 2 power conferences, and that's all we have, and that's what we have in the NFL. And it's scary to think, but it could happen, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, it's always bread. Andy, man, listen, me and you have spent hours talking this subject, right? I just want to know how soon you think, and I want to know which conference makes the biggest move, because they're already going to do the scheduler thing. But then what conference makes the move to saying, okay, this is it. There's no more of the rest of this stuff going on.
So in Heather Deitch's reporting over on ESPN.com, you can read the article. The headline's about scheduling, but 3 paragraphs down, she essentially is reporting and has a quote from Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, saying that they're looking at in the new expanded playoff, guaranteed 4 or more playoff spots for the Big Ten and SEC. Talking about eliminating the selection committee altogether and only doing automatic conference bids, and talking about how there's essentially an advisory committee made up of Big Ten and SEC chancellors, athletic directors, and important members of influence that basically come together and advise all these things together. At this point in time, it's really obvious that 2026, with the expanded playoff, is going to be the timeline that the SEC and Big Ten are looking to make all of this happen. And the only way that this stops in any way, shape, or form is for ESPN and the playoff to step in and say, no. We don't want you two being the only 2 schools, because ESPN, doesn't have an exclusive Big Ten deal. It doesn't have an exclusive SEC. It has an exclusive SEC deal, but the ESPN, again, who runs the playoff, is still paying millions of dollars for the next 5-6 years to ACC network. It's still potentially in with the Big 12 in different TV contracts. I think that's the only way we really stop this, because ESPN doesn't want to be left holding the bag and saying, well, we agreed this to happen and we just completely devalued all of these other TV rights that we're spending so much money on. Now, what I will say is that all of those negotiations are coming up within the next, I believe, 5 to 6 years. So I think 2026 is the aggressive timeline, but by 2030, we're going to have it's going to be 2 conferences. Like Sarah hit it out of the head. There's going to be 2 sides to this. There's going to be, I don't know what they're going to call it, but it's going to be a 2-horse race, and those are going to be the conferences that run it all.
Baby NFL. That's what they're going to call it, baby NFL. But so listen, I'm going to give both of y'all a chance to pick one team, and then we're going to go to break. What conference makes the move, and what team do they go after? Sarah, I'm going to go with you first. What team breaks from this and says, look, or you give me 2 teams. 2 teams, this one conference is going to say, look, those 2 are coming with us. We don't care what everybody else does. Your pick, if you had to guess right now today.
Out of the conferences that we're probably not going to see anymore? Is that
2 teams and where are they going? Yeah.
I could definitely see probably picking apart the Big 12 first. And I think that Colorado could probably be possibly one, but that would only be, I think, personally, if Prime were to stay. And then I would think probably see either something like, Kansas State or someone like that actually go, because they've really built that program. And I just see that them and the split in the Big 12 is starting to really show, and they're really showing their dominance, and they have a really great coach. They have a young quarterback, and I could see those being those, but I still would need to know a little bit more before I could do
Facts. Andy, your 2 squads, and where are they going?
The Big Ten's going to do everything that they can to get Notre Dame on board. We've been waiting for that to happen. I just think in this world, like they're already in with the NBC deal. I think that pushes. It's all about a formality. The only other school that I think has a reasonable shot right now is that if you're the Miami Hurricanes, you're trying to play your way into that SEC. I think Florida State dropping off and becoming such a mess has opened the door for Miami to be the one Florida team that makes the jump into one of these conferences. The only other way that I could see us, like North Carolina, Duke, are schools that I think would be interested. But I just don't see what they bring to the table right now, especially considering how poor their football has been in such a down conference. SMU is going to try to buy their way into a conference, but like again, we haven't really seen them at the Power 5 level for all that long. It just really comes down to, there's very few TV markets that the SEC and the Big Ten don't have covered right now. And the biggest fish that's out there right now is Notre Dame, and the Big Ten has been doing everything they can to get the Irish into the Big Ten.
Yeah. My two schools, Andy, one of them is definitely Notre Dame, but I'm going to call another one. I think that the Big Ten is about to be very aggressive to go after Va-Tech. I think that Va-Tech, based on the tradition, based on the football, based on the quality that they put up every year, even when they have down years, that they're definitely a serviceable institution to join the Big Ten. So I can see Va-Tech jumping in with Notre Dame, and then we saying, okay, we're locking it down. Now, last part, I'm just going to say I might also see SEC teams jumping at Big Ten teams and Big Ten teams jumping at SEC teams. I can see a world, y'all might say I'm crazy as all get up, but I can see a world where Tennessee and Kentucky jump ship. I can see that happening, where they draw the line at the Mason-Dixon line. And they said, listen, north of Mason-Dixon, you're Big Ten. And I can see them aggressively going after Kentucky and aggressively going after Tennessee. So this thing ain't over. But this merger, and I think that's what this is about. The scheduling is about so that doesn't happen. So they don't start picking each other off. But that's another subject for another topic, another day. Listen, y'all, we're going to take another commercial break. We're going to pause for a second on the Level Up College Football Podcast on Fans First Sports Network. Wherever you're listening, we'll be right back. If you're watching us live on YouTube, just give us a second, and we'll be right back with the Level Up College Football Podcast. And we're back. Fans First Sports Network, Level Up College Football Podcast. Sarah C, Andy P, and Big G doing what we do. Now, listen, y'all. We got this week is the low week. We got 4 decent games we're going to talk about. Not like something that's just going to break the bank. But every year that we've done this, Andy, this is what, year 2 or whatever we've done it. We always get where there's a week we're like, and then now it's a great week. So we're going to give you 4 games, lay it out. We're going to start with, I think, the best game on the schedule, because I think this is make or break for both of these teams. Missouri versus Texas A&M. Listen, I'm calling Missouri's fool's gold. I don't care what nobody say. Say what you want to say. I'm saying they ain't for real. But I want to get you guys' thoughts first because I think Missouri's going to try to make a push for it. So, but I want to see what y'all say first before I tell you my schedule and score. I mean, my ranking and a score. So, Andy, you go first, bro. Who you got? Missouri and Texas A&M.
I'm not going to lie. Texas A&M went and fooled around and might have found itself a defense here. We knew that this was going to happen under this coaching staff at some point in time. We knew that the defense was going to come around. It was just a matter of when. But they have figured it out a little bit faster than I thought they would. And I really do think that that's going to be the key to this game, because Missouri has struggled on the defensive side of the ball relative to where we thought they would be. But their offense also has not necessarily clicked at the level that we expected out of their wide receiver core. They're just not as explosive. They're just not as efficient or consistent as you would expect. And so if this is a game where they go on the road and Texas A&M is making it ugly here, things can get bad in a hurry. I do think that overall Missouri is still the better team, but Texas A&M has a chance to make it real interesting here if they play like they have the last couple of weeks, as opposed to that team that got steamrolled by Notre Dame in the opener.
Big facts. Sarah, your thoughts concerning Texas A&M and Missouri?
Well, I haven't had a lot of faith in Missouri pretty much all season, especially after the third week where, I mean, the first two games you let up no scores, and then you're letting BC, and then you're going into double overtime against Vanderbilt, who I think is actually a lot better than a lot of people expected, but they're not a top team in the SEC. But this is going to be, like Andy said, this is going to be just an ugly game. I think that it's going to be on who can get at least one score up first. It's going to be all rushing. I don't see a lot of balls in the air on either side. I just think that they both have the same offensive strategy. So, it's going to be based off of, again, who makes the mistakes. A&M at least has a little bit more takeaways. And if they can start getting the ball thrown, I think that they will get those interceptions and they will take advantage of them like they have in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah. Listen, I don't disagree with you guys, but I'm going to tell you something. Who I think is the most dangerous, underrated player in the country is Marcel Reed, the quarterback of Texas A&M University. Since they switched quarterbacks, this kid, now keep in mind, they've only played 4 or 5 games, whether they're 4-1 or 3-1, right? So he's only played 3 games. He's got almost 600 yards passing and 6 touchdowns with no interceptions. This kid can sling that ball. And I think that Texas A&M's definitely, Andy, has got their front 4 defensively is dangerous. So the issue is going to be, can Luther Burden and his squad come in there and cause all kind of issues and problems? But listen, going down there and fighting against the 12th man and A&M, that's not to be played with. Ask Notre Dame and ask Tim Lyons how that's like to be played with. You're going to come out of there, and if you win, you're going to feel like you lost because you got beat up. So before I go any further, I just want to get you guys' scores concerning this game and what you think an outcome. Sarah, you go first. Missouri, Texas A&M, who you got?
So I went with A&M because I do agree. I think ever since they made that quarterback switch, it has been a completely different team offensively. And I went with A&M going 27-14, and I'd like to see Missouri finally fall enough that they should have fallen in the past.
I'm digging it. Andy, who you got in the score, bro?
Yeah, I really like Eli Drinkwitz. I like what Missouri's done in terms of talent, but there's just something off with this team right now. I don't know if it's Brady Cook. I don't know if it's the line. They're just not able to do a whole lot on offense to the level that we expected. I think Texas A&M is going to really cause frustrations for them all night. I do think that their offense is greatly improved. I still think it's going to be close, though, so I'm going to go Texas A&M 27, Missouri 26. I just think it's going to be real tight game all the way through, but I think Texas A&M pulls it out in the end.
Yeah, I like you guys' scores, definitely. I'm going to go with Texas A&M to win the game 31-24, and I think that A&M dominates. I think Missouri gets out to an early lead, but A&M dominates the third and the fourth quarter. And I think they roll and they say, listen, Missouri, you're not ready for the big boys. Not yet. We thought you was. And this should be a team, this is going to tell me about that SEC bias. When they lose, how far do they drop? Because we just saw Ole Miss not hardly go nowhere. But if Missouri lose, how far do you drop? So we're going to see some more of this SEC bias. All right, now listen. We haven't talked what's week. This is going into week what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is week 6, right? We ain't talked about my boys all year. This is the first time we get to ramp and rave about the Buckeye boys. But listen,
they haven't played anybody.
That's correct, Andy. They ain't played nobody. But they got a big game this week. Ohio State is 20.5-point favorites over Iowa, who we know Iowa's got a defense. But can they score? That's the issue. So because Sarah, you a Buckeye, you down with the Buckeyes as well. For those that can't see, she got the big Buckeye shirt on right now. So I want to get your review or what you thinking we're going to do, because we got a big game in 2 weeks. Do we look past it or do we lock in and stay focused against the Iowa Hawkeyes?
Oh, we're starting. Oh, sorry. I didn't know we were starting with me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My bad.
Because I'm Ohio State, yeah.
Hey,
so
Mandy, she was mesmerized with the Buckeyes. She was mesmerized.
I mean, I am a little bit.
Yeah.
Have been for 20 years now.
Big facts.
Iowa's actually put up some points this year, which has been extremely interesting to see. They just normally haven't been on a scoring thing. They usually are just the team that can, hold someone to 7 points and win a game. I mean, Ohio State has the much better talent on both sides of the ball. I mean, it's not going to be an easy game. I also don't think it's going to be the most difficult game that they're going to have, but I hope that they don't look past it, because I think that Iowa, has ways to get through them. I would really, really, really like to see Caleb Downs have like a standout game this week. Like, just be the standout player on this game. Like, keep them, stuff them, everything. I just, as long as they can put the pressure up front and not allow them to have a rushing attack and have McNamara try to throw a ball, I mean, they could end up winning by 40, but it's all going to be, but I think that's all going to be based off of if that defense can really, really pressure that front, because they have a really great rushing attack on Iowa. I mean, the 3 games they won, they put up 31, 38, and 40 points. When was the last time you saw that many points from Iowa? So
that's big facts.
I think it's going to be a fun game. But I'm hoping to see Smith have at least 2 touchdowns. But like I said, I really want to see that defense really show their colors. And I would love to see Caleb Downs finally, really look like the guy that we're supposed to have had whenever he came in.
Big facts. Andy, your thoughts concerning my beloved Ohio State Buckeyes and them Iowa Hawkeyes?
Right now, Ohio State is loved by ESPN's FPI. It's the number 1 team in Bill C's SP Plus rankings. They have the number 2 defense in the country behind Iowa in terms of SP Plus. Offense is where I think this is where things get interesting, because I don't think I'm going to go out on a limb here. I don't think Iowa's going to score a single point in this game. I think that their offense has been overinflated. We saw how bad Minnesota was at stopping Michigan this past weekend. Troy, who they scored 40 against, is now actively rebuilding. They are not a Sun Belt contender, and the entire Sun Belt looks really down this year. So that game is now getting some caveats here. And then when they played Iowa State, the only real team that they've played so far, that high-flying offense was limited to just 19 points. And Ohio State's defense is significantly better than Iowa State's defense here. The only concern that I have is really, we know how good the Iowa defense is. I still have some concerns about the offensive line for Ohio State. This would be a really good game for me to see how well do they actually run block. That they haven't needed to be exceptionally great at run blocking this year, but you've seen it sometimes, like the edge setting hasn't been consistent. Sometimes the different run blocking in the middle hasn't been all up to snuff. You know that is something that Chip Kelly is working on, because that is so essential to what Chip Kelly does as an offensive game planner. But for me, Iowa's the first team that Ohio State has played this year that could maybe take advantage of some of these offensive line inconsistencies that the Buckeyes have. But that, for me, is the most interesting part of this game, because otherwise I think that the Ohio State defense is going to eat against this Iowa offense that's going to come in trying to throw the ball around, and the Ohio State secondary is just going to really enjoy that.
Yeah. I agree with both you guys' points, but I'm going to be honest now. Like I said, I'm a Buckeye till I die. But I don't have concerns on the offensive line anymore. And I definitely don't have concerns with the wide receivers' ability to block, because this last game, Emeka Buka, Smith, Carnell Tate, Ennis, they was out there causing problems, right? But I got a question mark still for the Ohio State team, and it's that quarterback. Will Howard looked pedestrian against Michigan State for about a quarter and a half. He threw 2 passes that should have got picked, and he threw 1 pick. He threw into double coverage, and he looked like a deer in the headlights. So Iowa's defense is a step up from Michigan State's defense. Matter of fact, Iowa's defense might be the best defense they play all year. And that includes Penn State, that includes Michigan, that includes Oregon, right? And so is he going to be looking like a deer in the headlights again? Because if he does, now all of a sudden you're one-dimensional. And if you're one-dimensional, listen, that's not good for the Buckeyes. Jeremiah Smith's able to do what he does because Quinshon Jenkins scares the brakes out of you. Emeka Egbuka eats because Travion Henderson is bananas, right? So it's give and take. So Iowa's goal is going to be trying to make Ohio State one-dimensional. So listen, Will Howard, it's now or never, bro. It's now or never. I know it's your team. I know it's your squad, but you got to show up and show out because moving forward, no more scrubs. We got Iowa. We got Oregon. We got Nebraska. We got Penn State. We got Michigan. We got dogs left. So it's time for you to show up and start doing what you need to do. But I'm going to digress a little bit. Tone it down. I want to know you guys' score. Sarah, call your score for the Buckeyes-Iowa game.
So I think Iowa at least is going to get one touchdown. I think it'll probably it's either going to happen super early or it's going to happen in garbage time. I just can't figure out which one I think might possibly happen. I have Ohio State 36, Iowa 7.
Oh, blowout city. Andy, your score.
Yeah, I'm with you actually, Big G. I do think that this is going to be a game where we're going to come out a little bit concerned about the Ohio State offense. I just think it's going to be on the run blocking side instead of the Will Howard side. But give me Ohio State 24, Iowa nothing. And we come out of that game. It's a beatdown. And somehow we come out of there with more questions than answers when it comes to Ohio State.
Yeah. I'm thinking that Iowa's going to make it a game for a half. And then in the third and fourth quarter, Ohio State's going to just dust them off. I got Ohio State winning 38-14, and I got Jeremiah Smith scoring 2. Now, my prayers might get answered, and he might get 3. And then I'm going to be talking big cash going to Oregon. Because if he get 3, that means Will Howard performed. But I just think of what he is, he's got to be the guy. So give me Ohio State 38. But I'm telling you, that first quarter and a half to 2 quarters, it's going to be a fight. It's going to be a real fight. All right, game 3. To me, they say in Texas A&M, Missouri, this SEC game this week is off the chain. Ole Miss, who just got the beat down. I talked to my homeboy, Kevin Ingram. Shout out to Kevin Ingram. Ole Miss, great. Big-time linebacker out of Ole Miss. I talked to him. I asked him, I said, hey, man, is Jackson Dart for real? He was like, gee, I don't know. So now, after they got the beat down against Kentucky, they go into South Carolina, who's been pissed off because they had LSU's dead to rights. Quarterback don't get hurt. They're undefeated, and all eyes are on them. So, Andy, your thoughts with Ole Miss and South Carolina, bro?
I mean, I texted you both about this immediately. I wanted a reason to get off the Ole Miss bandwagon. I've been looking for it all year. I don't want to trust Lane Kiffin. I don't want to trust this team. They gave me the reason because this was they just played the most Ole Miss game ever, where they played a Kentucky team that made the game ugly. They played a team that made it hard for them to do what they like to do. They played a team that was physical, and they couldn't rise up for the challenge. And now you're going on the road to South Carolina, a team that knows that they can hang with these high-flying offenses because of that defensive front. Jackson Dart did not look good in this game. He really struggled to deal with pressure. And you're going to have a team that has the capability of rushing 4 and then just sitting back. I just think that this is going to be a game way closer than the spread says it's going to be. And ultimately, I think this is a terrible matchup for Ole Miss.
Got it. Sarah, your thoughts concerning South Carolina and Ole Miss?
I agree with Andy with South Carolina 100%. I think that they played a great game against LSU. And if their quarterback wouldn't have gotten hurt, it would have been a completely different game. And that defense is so on point. And they have that one edge rusher who already has 5.5 sacks. And I think that he is going to put the pressure on Ole Miss and on Jackson Dart. But the big thing is that South Carolina can just win this game with time of possession because Ole Miss can't seem to get time of possession because they have no offense that they thought that they were going to have. Like, you take away their receivers and everything, you don't have a rushing attack, in my opinion. I didn't really see much of anything on their side at all. And they only had 20 minutes of possession. So I think it's going to come down to that. And even with Ashford on South Carolina, he can keep the ball and he's been rushing. And then you have Sanders, who is a very nice little running back to have in the back end. And I really see them just pounding that entire game. And playing down there, from what I can see, is not an easy place to play because that home crowd is on an 11 all the time.
But not LSU. That stuff was bananas, man. I was digging it. So now listen. So the question is Lenore Sellers 100%? They had a week off, the week to prepare. If he's 100%, they're a completely different team because the backup quarterback for them is big trash. Like that kid, he couldn't throw a pass to a wide open wide receiver standing 10 yards away, and $100 bill hand is going to be waiting on him if he just complete the pass. He couldn't do it. But Lenore Sellers got NFL written on him. But those two defensive ends, number 5 and number 6, and one of them is the freshman, Dallin Stewart. Oh, my God. Them boys cause problems. So, Jackson Dart, we coming after you, bro. But see, Ole Miss going to try to play fast, and I don't think that works. Kentucky put the blueprint down. But before I go off, Sarah, give me your score. South Carolina and Ole Miss.
So I'm going with another low one. I just think that South Carolina is going to just, like I said, pound. And if they can keep this low scoring, which I really think they have the ability to, I'm going with South Carolina winning, and I had 16-13.
Oh, Andy, your score, bro.
I think there's going to be a few more points in this game, but I do think I'm with Sarah. I just don't think that there's any reason for South Carolina to open this up. And again, I'm looking for all the reasons to jump on the Lane hate train here. So I'm going to get on board. I'm going to knock Ole Miss out of the playoff here. I'm going to take South Carolina winning this game 20-13.
So listen, I think South Carolina going to blow them out. I think they're going to blow them out. Give me South Carolina 31, Ole Miss 13. And South Carolina gets one defensive touchdown and a special teams touchdown. They're going to pop Jackson Dart, and that ball's going up in the air. And I don't know if it's going to be number 5 or number 6, but one of them is going to get it. And when they get it, they're going to the house. So South Carolina going to dust Ole Miss out and get Ole Miss out of here as our first pretender out of the playoff that got all the hype. All right, we got one more last game. It's a Big Ten game, but to me, it's an elimination game. Rutgers versus Nebraska, y'all. Rutgers undefeated. Rutgers is rough. And as a matter of fact, I looked at Rutgers' schedule. Rutgers wins this game. Don't be shocked if Rutgers is in the Big Ten championship game. Don't be shocked. They ain't got nobody left, right? So real quick, Andy, your thoughts on Rutgers? And on Nebraska.
Yeah, I think Rutgers is kind of like Iowa light. Offense is just not quite there. The defense is significantly better, but unlike Iowa, where the defense is one of the best in the country, Rutgers has a top 25 defense. Still good, still really respectable, just not nearly as elite. So this is a game where I think it's interesting because Nebraska is definitively the better team, but we saw last week, we've been seeing it more and more. I don't know if Nebraska's offense is good. I think that they've done a lot of good work at protecting Raiola. I think that they've done a lot of good scheming, and they're really good about play calling in good situations. But even in that Purdue game, like you saw it, like they're just not trying to move the ball vertically a whole lot either. They don't trust him. He's not throwing over the middle of the field at all. It's all to the sidelines on designed rollouts and on designed flat reads. I just don't know if Nebraska has that added dimension to their offense yet. And that's something that Greg Schiano is going to jump all over. And I think it's going to make the game real ugly for a real long time.
Got it. Sarah, is Rutgers looking at the Big Ten championship game if they get a dub this week?
I mean, if they can pull it off, I mean, good for them. That'd be great. I just think that Rule really has Nebraska believing in themselves. They may not have the talent as much as they would hope right now, but usually it's year 3 when he really starts to show up his teams. So, but I think that because of that defense, I just think that they're going to stop that rushing attack that Rutgers seems to have. They don't seem to have much of a passing attack, and Raiola just needs to, make sure he even like little slot passes, just anything to keep up and make sure that he can keep his completions. I don't see him having a big game, but I definitely think that Nebraska has enough on the other side that they will keep Rutgers from getting, a couple hundred yards on them like they have in the past couple weeks.
I feel it. Listen, before I swing it to you guys for the predictions, I just want to read the remaining schedule for the Rutgers running rough. Rutgers, and Greg Schiano and his dogs over there. At Nebraska versus Wisconsin versus UCLA, at USC versus Minnesota, at Maryland versus Illinois, at Michigan State. Rutgers can run the table, y'all. No Penn State, no Oregon, no Ohio State, no Michigan. Come on now. The season's on the line right here. And I'm just saying, yeah, Rutgers ain't showed that they can throw the ball. I think they quarterback like a 795 yards passing. Not even 800 yards. And this week 6, boy, that means you couldn't throw a pass to save your life. But they got a 600-yard rusher, and they got a 300-yard rusher behind him. And their defense makes big-time plays. They're one of the highest teams in the country concerning turnover ratio. They get after it. So I just want to see, Sarah, Rutgers versus Nebraska. Who you got?
I took Nebraska. I don't think it's going to be a super high-scoring game. I think it's going to be close. I actually kind of like the cover because I think that those two running backs are going to probably at least get in the end zone at least once on Rutgers. But if they can keep them out, I think then it could end up being a blow-up game. And they're playing in Nebraska. And again, that's just a crowd that is just itching for wins and just really wants to believe in this team, and playing there is going to be tough. And I don't know if Rutgers has that yet. I mean, going into these bigger places. So it's going to be a really big task for Rutgers. I am very intrigued to see if they can pull it off, but I did 28-21 Nebraska.
Got it. Andy, I heard a little birdie told me Nebraska wearing all red. A little birdie said they putting Rutgers in all white and said they're going to wear the all reds. A little birdie told me. So do they get down with the all red in Nebraska this week, bro?
Yeah, I like the Huskers because I think the Huskers are better. And I do think that Rutgers' offensive challenges are going to come back to bite them. If this game was in Piscataway, New Jersey, I'd feel a little bit differently. But it's a home game. The fans have been showing out. That stadium is going to be rocking. Give me the Huskers 24-17 with the all red. And I think, again, like Sarah mentioned, I think Raiola is going to do just enough to get it done on the offensive side of the ball for the Huskers.
Man, but y'all, listen, I agree with y'all, but my heart is telling me, man, Rutgers is going to win this game, man. Schiano wants to get to a Big Ten championship and prove that he belongs with the elites. But going to Nebraska in Lincoln, man, I don't know, man. So versus going with my heart, I'm going to go with what I know. Who's got the better quarterback? Nebraska. But I think it's close. 31-28, Nebraska wins by a field goal late to get the victory. But Rutgers going to give them everything they got. All right, y'all, final thoughts before we get off the pod today? Any final things y'all want to say, your sneaky game of the week, or anything y'all got to say? Oh, Rob Lightfoot want to bet me corner time. Who you got, Rob? I said Nebraska going to win. I know you ain't talking about Rutgers, but I ain't going to bet no corner time right now, man. I got a lot hanging out there anyway. But any sneaky games or any final thoughts for you guys this week before we get out of here? Sarah, I'm going to shoot it to you first.
I did pick one sneaky game just because I'm really intrigued to see if Louisville can kind of come back and play a little bit better, because they're going up against SMU, who just seems to want to run all over every team that they possibly can. And they just put up 42 against Florida State. So I'm definitely intrigued to see how it is. I think SMU has a efficient quarterback, but their defense seems to be playing at the right time and getting the pick sixes. And it just seems like as a whole this season, especially for determining games, turnovers just seem to be happening at the most exciting times, at the right times. I just can't even think of one game that I saw this weekend where I didn't see at least one great interception that pretty much turned the tide of the game. So I'm really, really excited to see some of these defenses and these DBs and see if they can really just continue to keep up against these high-flying wide receivers.
Got it. Andy, sneaky game or any final thoughts out of you, bro?
Game I'm going to, man. Friday night primetime game on FS1. UNLV Syracuse out in Vegas. UNLV opened as a 10-point favorite. It's now down to UNLV 6.5. Bill Connolly's SP Plus likes it as a 1-point UNLV favorite game. I think that this game is going to end up being real tight. Kyle McCord, this is your moment, man. UNLV is going to have a gunslinger on the other side of the ball. This is where Kyle McCord, he's got to bounce back after that Stanford game. Looked really good against Holy Cross, but everybody looks good against Holy Cross. So let's see how he does against the team that for UNLV, they already took down Houston. They already took down a ranked Kansas team. Those were both on the road. If they take down Syracuse at home, it's going to be real interesting.
Man, Andy, listen, you know, I keep my eye over there peeled on the ACC, man. And I got a sneaky game this week. The Duke Blue Devils playing Georgia Tech. And I think the winner of this game plays the Hurricanes in the ACC championship game. I believe it because I'm going to tell you, Malik Murphy has went to Duke and shown out. Malik Murphy's got 1,300 yards passing, ladies and gentlemen, 12 touchdowns and 4 INTs. This the kid, if you don't know who he is, he was backing up Quinn Ewers out of Texas, and he had to get up out of there because they knew Arch Manning was on the horizon. But he's not a slouch. And Malik Murphy will be playing in the NFL. I promise you he will. So Malik Murphy and Duke, listen, y'all mess around and win this week? Yeah. You and Miami's head on a collision course. And I wouldn't be shocked. I would not be shocked at all if Duke came into that game with no L's. 0 L's. I'm talking about all the way live, handle their business every game because their next 3, Georgia Tech, Florida State, SMU, and then they got the U. They got the U at Miami. So I think that they're setting that game up. That could be a rematch in the ACC championship game. Malik Murphy, do what you do down there at Duke, man, and handle your business. All right, y'all. Thanks again for rocking with us this week. Thank you for rocking with the Level Up College Football Podcast. Make sure you listen to us wherever you can get your podcast. Make sure you follow Andy P and all the podcasts and all the stuff he's on. Man, I could go on for days about the stuff I am on. Sarah C, man, we thank you. But thanks for rocking with us, and we'll check you guys next week on Fans First Level Up College Football Podcast. We'll holla. Peace.